Okay, so final panel before lunch, and we're going to talk about school leadership and quality teaching, and it's going to be chaired by a very respected professional in this regard, Patrick Brazier, who's the Chief Executive of the Education Development Trust.
Hello there.
And on this
Professor.
panel,
Thank you. Yeah, very good to meet you. Please do sit in the... Yeah.
We have Professor Kwasi, Opoku-Amankwa, who is the
Dr. Njengere,
Director General of the Ghana Education Service. And we have Mwesiga, as I said, who is Education and Commissioner for Human Resources in Uganda. We have David Njengere, who is the Minister's Advisor for Curriculum, Minister of Education in Kenya, and Archie Lewis, Deputy Director of the General Institute of Development and Coordination, Western Cape Province, South Africa. What I can say about these four individuals, Patrick, is they are exactly on point for the subject matter. So look forward to it, and we'll run the clock to 1:15. Okay, thank you very much.
John, thank you very much for your introduction, and thank you very much to the panel for joining us here on stage, and a warm welcome to all the distinguished guests in the audience. I think we all know from personal experience that the quality of teaching in schools, and indeed the quality of school leadership, are probably the two most important aspects of improving the outcomes for the children at schools. And we've got a very distinguished panel here who can discuss some of the programs that you're delivering in your various countries to improve the quality of teaching and the quality of school leadership. And if we can start with you, Professor Kwasi, here in Ghana, what does a successful model for school leadership look like here in Ghana?
Thank you very much, and good afternoon to all of us. When you talk of education, I think about 70–80% of the success of any educational enterprise rests on leadership. Leadership at various levels. Leadership at the school level. In our case, we also have leadership at the district level, and then we have leadership at the regional level, and of course, leadership at the national level. The leadership at the school level is very key because that is where we do the actual implementation of the work. And this requires that you have heads or principals who have vision, heads or principals who engage, heads, principals who collaborate, but above all, they should be instructional leaders. They should be the kind of people that we refer to them as chief learning officers. They themselves should be learners and should be ready to support their teachers, to impact knowledge, to drive teaching and learning. Here in Ghana, what we have done over the last 2 to 3 years is to identify the core issues that affect leadership. And we realize that the kind of leadership that we have in our schools is said that people grow into leadership. They grow into leadership in the sense that you teach for a number of years, and then there's a rank where when you get to that rank, you become the leader or the head or the headmaster or head teacher. So we don't seem to be doing any special preparation for people to go into that kind of leadership. But over the last 2 to 3 years, what we've done is that first, we have proposed to have 2 pathways. One pathway will be a teacher who wants to be in the classroom and become a master teacher, a consultant teacher, whatever, a specialized teacher, whatever name we want to call. Then the other pathway will be those who want to be in leadership. And for that proposal, we are working vigorously to implement. But whilst we are doing that, what we've done is to go into some arrangement, partnership with IEPA. IEPA, it's one of our institutes in the University of Cape Coast. And then some other partners to develop leadership skills. Leaders, as I've indicated, should be people who have vision for the school. And their vision should be to improve on teaching and learning.
Yeah.
Their vision should be to improve on learning outcomes, and that should be the focus. They should not only be administrative leaders, but they should be more of instructional leaders. Beyond that, what we've also done is that we have what we call the circuit officers or circuit supervisors who go around the schools to inspect the schools to find out whether teaching and learning is going on. But largely, they've become kind of policemen or auditors looking at what you've done wrong or what you've done right. We have rebranded them. Now we call them school support and improvement officers. And theirs is to work with the heads of the schools to support teaching and learning in the schools. At the district level and at the regional level, we have also worked with our regional and district directors, and we've set performance targets for them to be able to work with the various districts and the various regions. Every year we have a period where we discuss the performance of the various schools and various districts with the heads and then with the regional and district officers. And once we do that, it is their expectation to go down and make sure that these things are implemented. These projects that we're doing, even though at the very toddling stage, we found improvement in the results of our senior high school exams last year, and we strongly believe that some of these leadership activities that we engage in are the ones that have given us some improvement in that. For example, in mathematics, at that level, we had almost 50% improvement in the results, which is very encouraging. And we hope that we can maintain that once we get the leaders getting it right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, I really liked your characterization of the head teachers as chief learning officers. I think that really epitomizes the core of the role.
Yeah.
But also, I think recognizing that not all teachers, even very good teachers, want to become head teachers, and therefore having a proper career path for excellent teachers is also a very good part of your program.
Thank you.
Moving on to Uganda, and very good to have you here.
Thank you.
I understand that your ministry is using results-orientated management systems that continually evaluate the performance of schools. Can you tell us a little bit more about that system and how it's working and how you're using it to improve standards?
Okay, thank you so much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In Uganda, we have embraced results-oriented management at all levels. At the headquarters for the Ministry of Education and Sports, but also for our schools. And what this means is that on an annual basis, we develop our annual performance plans for the institutions and for the schools. And these annual performance plans at the institutional level are based on the education sector strategic plan, which is broken down according to the financial years. And these are used at a lower level for the individuals. Based on this annual performance plan, the individual teachers, the head teachers, they come up with their individual performance plans. And this follows depending on the institution. For the institutions that follow a calendar year, they will develop them according to the calendar year. For the institutions that follow the semester or term, they also develop their individual performance plans according to that cycle. And continuously, there is a process of continuous monitoring and assessment. And in terms of monitoring, even at the headquarters, we have an inspection directorate that goes into the field to inspect. And the inspection tool has been reviewed in line with the targets and indicators that are set in the annual performance plans of these teachers and head teachers and principals of institutions. So when the inspectors go out to the field to inspect, they are looking at what has been set for these teachers. So the assessment follows that. There is continuous assessment, but also we do annual, rather quarterly performance reviews to determine whether you are on course, to ensure that the plans that you have made are implemented at the end of the year, not to wait until the end and then you realize there is slippage. So during the quarterly reviews, the head teachers, the teachers and tutors and instructors are asked to make a statement whether they are on course or not, and if there are slippages, the strategies are devised on how to address them before the end of the time. And we have come up with our sector-specific targets and indicators for each category. The leadership, the head teachers and principals, and the teachers. And that is a tool that helps them to continuously monitor. If, for example, a teacher is not able to deliver a lesson for one reason or the other, so in the plan, we have developed a tool for them to show if you have come up with a mechanism of recoveries to ensure that you've recovered the lessons that you missed out. And then even when the inspectors are on the ground, they are looking at this. But we've made it even a little bit easier. We have brought on board the school management committees. Initially, our school management committees, because we had not come up with proper guidelines and standards of the level of education, they were not able to assess the performance of the head teachers whom they are on a day-to-day basis managing. So now we've come up with the new guidelines and standards to ensure that they are able to supervise these head teachers. And we have, on the basis of the new guidelines, we've done the induction and training for them so that they understand the operations of the schools. So this followed through up to the end and up to the headquarters. So this is what we are doing. And the specific targets that we have developed, they are so comprehensive. However, we keep, they are at different levels, what is for the leadership team, what is for the teachers, and then we continuously monitor, and every end of the cycle, we come up with a circular on the basis of our monitoring to say, this is how we worked within this financial year. These were the areas of slippage. For the next financial year or assessment period, you are going to concentrate on these areas. So that's what we are doing.
So you've got a really systematic approach, starting with your top-level education sector plan and working right down into the schools. How long has this system been in place in Uganda?
Sorry?
How long have you followed this particular approach?
Yeah, for the last 2 years we have done this. Initially, we were relying on the guidelines that were issued by the Ministry of Public Service that comes up with a general performance management framework. But then as the education sector, we realized that we needed to customize that general framework to ensure that it suits our own environment. So for the last 2 years, this is what we have been doing. Okay. And The inspectors revised the inspection tool this financial year to ensure that it follows the targets that we have set for the different categories of the teaching staff.
And have you been able to see real improvements as a result of this approach in the last 2 years?
Yeah, we've been able to see the results, and when we go on the ground, we see the teachers and the head teachers. You realize that in terms of delivery on the planned targets and activities, it has been able to improve by almost 20%.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, very positive. Thank you very much. Dr. Njengere, you're the Minister's Advisor in Curriculum, is that right, from the Ministry of Education in Kenya? Can you give us an update on the implementation of the new competency-based curriculum in Kenya, and particularly how you have integrated teacher training and professional development of school leaders into the implementation of this new curriculum?
Okay, thank you very much. Kenya embarked on a major reform of its curriculum, and the kind of reforms that we embarked on in the curriculum necessitated a reform in our structure of education. And therefore, the reforms that we have embarked on have an implication both on the structure of education in terms of the number of years that a child spends in primary and secondary education. We have now reduced the number of years in primary from 8 years to 6 years, and we are going to increase the number of years in secondary from 4 years to 6 years. We have also changed our approach to the curriculum design from an objectives and content-based curriculum approach to a competency-based curriculum approach. Now, that required that first we come up with a basic education curriculum framework that would interpret what would be taught at what levels. And we navigated through that and came up with a framework. And in 2017, that was ready. Then we spent 2018 doing a pilot of that curriculum in early years education, that is from pre-primary 1 up to grade 2. And this year, we embarked on a national rollout of that curriculum up to grade 3. So next year, we anticipate that we will have that curriculum rolled out in grade 4. And what we have done in terms of teacher training is that all the teachers in the country who teach grade 1 up to grade 4 have been trained on a face-to-face basis for 1 week. That is going to conclude this month. We are hoping that in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we'll be done with that training. But of course, we recognize that training of teachers is not something that you can do in 5 days and expect they'll have deepened their understanding of the kind of paradigm shifts that you expect them to adopt. And therefore, we have come up with an online training program, which is called Elimika. So what teachers do is that they embark on the face-to-face training, and then after that face-to-face training, they can access a deeper level of the same content they were trained on an online platform. The other thing that we are doing is that we are creating what we call school-based teacher support systems, where we expect that in every school, we will train a champion of the curriculum. And we are creating 2 lessons a week at the end of the week, when teachers will come together in every school and they will have a time to reflect on some of the challenges they have been experiencing in implementation of the curriculum, and they will share among themselves. With respect to the head teachers, as we train the teachers in the face-to-face approach, we also create a day for them when they are trained on some of the instructional leadership practices that they need to adopt to support the implementation of the curriculum. So there are quite a number of changes, and of course, that means the capacities that teachers require to adapt to those changes may not happen overnight.
Yeah.
It will take time, and we are just first giving them the reassurance that they can do it.
Yeah.
Because the moment you come to a teacher and tell them that you need them to change, what they first need is the confidence to know that they can implement that change.
Absolutely. Change is always a challenge. And what about the head teachers? Are you also providing training for them? And has there been any resistance from head teachers around the new curriculum? How have you overcome that?
Yeah, so initially the head teachers are participating in a one-day training in the month of April, that's during the school holidays, in August and December. They'll have a one-day training. And we also have the Kenya Education Management Institute, which is a body that is set up by government primarily to empower the head teachers and their deputies. So that institution will embark on more intensive training of those head teachers on how they should support the curriculum implementation.
Okay. Thank you very much. And now moving on to South Africa, and Archie Lewis, the Deputy Director General of the General Institute of Development and Coordination from the Western Cape in South Africa. So how are Western Cape principals encouraged to engage in programs that support quality teaching and assessment as part of their professional development and as part of your approach to improve the outcomes in your schools?
Thank you for the question. Before I address your question, let me just take one step back. The education architecture in South Africa is a little bit different in the sense that we have the National Department of Basic Education, and then we have an education department in each of the 9 provinces. So I'm located in the Western Cape province, and that is where I work. So if I speak about the education, then I'm not necessarily reflecting on South Africa, but I'm reflecting on what is happening in the Western Cape as a province of South Africa. We're having one curriculum, but as provinces we have the leeway to tweak and amend and tune that curriculum to suit our own purposes. That is the one thing. The second thing of South Africa, a beautiful country, is that there is healthy competition amongst the 9 provinces. Unfortunately, that competition revolves around the final year, the last year of schooling, of the 12 years of schooling, which we called matric, when the learners exit. And those results of that external exam is a very exciting one. We are now in the process where we are awaiting those results in the country. And there is this healthy competition about which province is the best in terms of that final year results. But as an education department, at one point as senior managers, we sat down and we asked ourselves the question, is the delivery of education in this province about what is happening in the final year, the 12th year, or are we missing something in terms of the entire grade R to grade 12? Actually 13 years. And we ask ourselves tough and deep questions about our role in the education system in the province and whether we are just busy putting plasters over our challenges and we forget about the realities that's facing us. And out of that deep discussion, we coined a vision for the province. And that vision is quality education for every child, in every classroom, in every school in the province. And what we want to achieve with that vision is to provide every child that enters a school in the province, and we have 1,510 schools in the province, to provide that child with a fair opportunity to be successful and to give that child everything possible to become someone that can contribute towards the province and towards the country. And that vision is driving everything that we are doing in the education department in the province. We have consulted that vision with the different stakeholders, and we have reminded our teachers, of which we have 33,000, and I'm responsible for them, that your job and your existence and your salary that you get at the end of the month is attributed to the fact that we have 1.1 million learners in our schools. If those learners are not there, then you don't have a job as a teacher. We've reminded our teacher unions that you exist as a teacher union because we have children in our schools. And we've reminded our officials in our departments that you are providing a support services to schools, and you are receiving a salary and you exist because we have children in our schools. In other words, there is a mutual understanding in the province amongst all stakeholders that the education in the province is not about us. It's not about us as officials. It's not about you as teachers. It's not about you as teacher unions. It's about our children and to give those children an opportunity to be successful. That's just as a background. Our principals are the lead teachers in our schools. And our principals, for one, must understand the curriculum. You cannot be the leader in a school if you don't understand the curriculum and the demands of the curriculum. And the job of the principal is starting now in preparation of the new academic year starting in January, where principals are busy with the planning of their timetabling. In other words, the principal must at least have a profile of the competencies and the abilities of each teacher on his or her staff. Because you need to match those teachers towards your classes for the next year. We cannot afford, and our principals understand that, we cannot afford to put teachers in front of classes where they will fail the learners. We put teachers where, in terms of their competencies and their abilities, we can maximize what they offer the education department. And once a principal misses that opportunity, then we are already on the back foot. If you put the wrong teachers in the wrong grades, in the wrong classes, then we are already at the losing end. So principals are important, and part of the instructional leadership is to ensure that the right teacher is in the right classroom, in the right subject. That is where we start with the process. The second one is for the principal to set up the necessary structures in the school that can help with the monitoring and the evaluation of the curriculum as it gets delivered throughout the year. For our teachers in the classroom, we have assisted them in the sense that we have developed a matrix for teaching and learning. And that matrix speaks about 8 areas that any teacher in any classroom, in any subject area, can use to determine whether he or she is doing what is expected of them. Part of those 8 areas, for example, is planning and preparation. You cannot have a teacher in the system who enters a classroom and asks the class, where did we stop yesterday? I mean, as a teacher, you should know where you stopped and where to proceed with the lesson. Intellectual quality of teaching and learning, the language usage, assessing for learning, a supportive classroom, the infusing of technology into the classroom, the use of resources, reflection before, during, and after a lesson. As a good teacher, you must continuously reflect on your classroom practices. And the purpose of that reflection is to improve your pedagogy in the classroom. And that is important. And those 8 areas we've tasked each teacher. If you go into any classroom at any given time, those are the 8 areas that you must measure yourself. You must measure yourself in terms of what you are doing in that classroom. So that is one of the things that we are doing in terms of improving the quality of the curriculum.
And if I may, so really clear and strong and very important expectations on the teachers and on the leadership in schools. So what are you doing in terms of training and professional development to support the teachers to be able to deliver against those requirements?
The assistance to teachers, over and above the fact that you have your senior teachers overseeing your teachers, is to identify the gaps in the ability of our teachers. I think we are now at the point where we have our teachers to honestly look at themselves. It's not an easy task for any teacher to admit that I've got shortcomings. I think it's often embarrassing. That is what we have experienced. But we are now at the stage where teachers can honestly say, but if I'm the mathematics teacher, I think my knowledge about calculus is a little bit weak. And then we pull those teachers out of the system. We've got an institute in Cape Town, the Cape Teaching and Leadership Institute, which focus on professional development and addressing the gaps in our teachers. So we identify those gaps, we pull those teachers into the institute, we provide for what is happening in the school so that we don't destabilize and disrupt the school, and then we are trying to deal with those gaps in our teachers in order to send them back and to deal with that.
Thank you very much. Moving back to you in terms of one of the issues which is again common globally, and the issue of a teacher shortage. What is Ghana doing to address that issue and training enough teachers to meet the future demand here in Ghana?
Okay, thank you very much. In reality, we don't seem to have teacher shortage in Ghana. What we really have, it's the issue of proper deployment and rationalization. There are areas where you have more teachers than you require, and there are areas that you have less teachers than you do. So as part of our HR reforms, we are looking at how to deploy, how to rationalize, and there are a lot of issues that we need to take into consideration, social, cultural, economic issues that we need to consider in that context. And very recently, as recent as last week, we had discussions with the teacher unions on issues of deployment and rationalization. But there are some areas that we ourselves in the education service, Ghana Education Service, have identified as difficult areas. And usually when you post teachers to these areas, it is difficult for them to go or to stay for a longer period. What we need to do and what we are doing is to have some incentive or some motivation for them to be able to go. One of such motivation is to give them the opportunity. All of them will have the opportunities to upgrade themselves, but for those who opt to go to these areas, will have a much higher opportunity for upgrading themselves. And once you do some of these things, again, there are areas that sometimes you need things like vehicle, you need to support them with accommodation, and things like that. So it's something that we're working to make sure that it works. That is why we have decided to work with the teacher unions, and once we agree on some of these basic things, we will get them to be able to go to some of these areas. Again, as a way of improving on teacher quality, one of the things that we've done, I believe the minister indicated in his speech, is now to raise the quality of teachers by ensuring that the minimum that you're required to teach in our schools at any level will be a first degree. One, when it comes to issues of salaries and payments and things like that, it means it puts you at a level that is commensurable. Again, you also realize that it helps to reduce the number of teachers who want to go out for to upgrade themselves. Rather, we use the period where they will go up to upgrade themselves to become degree holders to do CPDs, to rather develop themselves within the profession so that it affects the quality of teaching and learning. Once we do that, it also reduces the time that they will be going out and then increases the time on task so that quality teaching and learning can take place in the classrooms. And these are some of the things that we are working around to make sure that we get the best for our students.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And then moving on again to Uganda, and picking up on some of the things that you were talking about your management systems. And I understand you've developed a teacher development and management system that's operating across the country. Can you tell us how you're using that to support continuous professional development for teachers?
Okay. We have come up with a remapping of our coordinating centers. And that remapping is according to the regions. And the way we do it is that we ensure that on a continuous basis, our teachers, they continuously get this professional development. And we've also ensured that under the Teacher Education Institute, we have this continuous professional development. And we have made it a requirement. For example, we've provided in our guidelines that these teachers must undergo at least a minimum of 40 working hours in a particular calendar year. So this therefore requires that they continuously do the professional development. And we have ensured that even in our performance assessment tools, we assess to determine whether you have undertaken these professional development programs. And we've also tried to do the assessment. We've incorporated the ICT in this area, and we are piloting it. We have a solution that we have come up with, which is time on task, as he has just mentioned. And we ensure that this one helps us to track and see whether the training that you've had professionally is translating into the real learning outcomes in class. How do you manage the trainings? Have you got these pedagogical skills during the professional development? Are they being translated in class? So we continuously monitor. we ensure that these teachers, they continue to get those skills and translate them and ensure that at the end of the day, it's benefiting the learners.
Yeah, thank you very much. And if I can build on that a little bit with you, Dr. Njengere, obviously monitoring and evaluation and the data are critical to understanding the performance of the education system. What, if any, further investment do you think is necessary in Kenya in developing really effective education management information systems?
Sorry, come again on that.
What, if any, investment, additional investment is necessary, do you think, in Kenya to build effective nationwide education management information systems so that you can monitor effectively the performance of the schools and the head teachers?
Thank you very much. For that, we are approaching it in a very cautious way, because we want to avoid the challenge of starting to measure too early.
Yeah.
Because there's always this anxiety around, are we getting it right?
Yeah.
Before you have fixed everything. We acknowledge that this is a huge change that we are bringing into the system. Because like in terms of the statement of the learning outcomes, we have shifted from the traditional Bloom's taxonomy to the revised. And when you get to the point of shifting from having the highest level from evaluation to creating, it will take time for teachers to understand what do you mean by creating, yet they were used to having the highest level as evaluation. And so if we move in too fast and start making conclusions that perhaps they are unable to do it or whatever, we will be judging it too early. And this being the first year of implementation, we want to have the monitoring happen more at the school level, so that it is the teachers sitting among themselves and having moments of reflection and asking, are we getting it right? And then they can report back to the next structure and try and find a contextual way of addressing the challenges they're having. So the only level at which the national government is coming in is at grade 3, we are having a transitional assessment that targets literacy, numeracy, and integrated learning assessment. So for that, what we are doing is that we come up with the test items and send them to the schools. Then the teacher is supposed to administer those assessment items and give feedback to the learners, and they only report back to the examinations council, not so that the exams council can give individual reports to the schools, but so that we can analyze at the national level to find out how the country is responding to this shift. So that's one area that is helping us to monitor what is happening, but we are very cautious about coming in the first year to start making conclusions on whether things are working the way they're supposed to work. Otherwise, it will end up being like the Premier League, where at the end of the season, you come in, you start firing the coach for the wrong reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Interesting analogy there. And then moving on, a slightly different area. It's clear that 21st century learning requires competencies beyond just simple subject and content knowledge. What reforms have you been able to put in place in the Western Cape to support teachers in attaining competencies such as collaboration and communication to support the more fundamental learning of their students?
We have realized in the province that even in preset and after training of teachers, nothing really happens to address the softer skills of teachers when they enter the classroom. And we have embarked upon what we regard as a systemic game changer to address the softer skills of our teacher corps. Because one of the things that our teachers are struggling with, which we reckon, is the whole issue of attitude, that you are a learner in my classroom, you come from this area, therefore nothing good can come from you. That kind of negative attitude. And it links with our vision that I've said, quality education for every child in every classroom, in every school in the province. So we've embarked upon a 7 to 10 year systemic program called Transform to Perform. And we've got different categories of sub-programs in Transform to Perform to address those softer skills within our learners, within our teachers, and within our leadership. For learners, for example, we are living in communities, sadly, after democracy in our country, where the moral values in our communities, there's nothing left of it. It's inexplicable. And our learners are in our schools, and after school they go back into those communities and they are exposed to what is happening in those communities. So we are focusing on our learners with what we call a strong values program, where we have tasked each school to take on 12 values per year, one value per month. For example, if the school takes the value respect for 1 month, then everything in that school must centers around that value. If I'm in the mathematics classroom, I must infuse that value into that. If I'm in geography, a language, everything. The principal in the staff room, the principal during the assembly must speak about that value for that entire month. Because we believe that if we can expose our learners for the 12 years of schooling to 144 values, many of them will be repeated, then at least we will send a generation of learners into the community that can start speaking and addressing those values. And we are seeing the results already. In one town in the Overberg, Swellendam, the entire town has adopted the value per month of the schools. In other words, all schools in that town have got the same value. That same value is preached for that month in the churches. If you go to the post office, you will see that value for that month in the post office, in the bank. And that is actually how we want to transform the softer skills and hope to get somewhere. With our teachers, we've done the same thing. We're putting them for the next 7 years. We will put every teacher through a program called the Mindset, the Growth Mindset Program, where we want teachers to think differently about what they are doing, to reflect on what they are doing, to see learners differently in their classroom, and to realize that as a teacher, I've got something to give to that child which can change the life of those child. So there's a lot of consultation that's happening with NGOs, but that's an aspect that we believe systemically can push education in the province to a higher level.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to all the panel. I'm sure we could continue the discussion, but it would probably be dangerous to become between such a large audience and their lunch. So just let me finish by thanking you all. There's some really interesting and exciting initiatives going on across the continent, and it's really good to hear about them. And let us close with just playing the video from Education Development Trust. And we as an organisation have a particular expertise in school leadership and in professional development. So it's really interesting to hear of all the great work that you're doing in these areas. Thank you very much.
Yep.